Hey guys, so I'm Loz and this is me. But it hasn't always been like this, and I thought today I might share just some of my journey because a lot of people that know me as the person that I am today, who looks and sounds and acts the way that I do on social media and in real life, not everybody really understands or has any sort of relative association with the things that I've done and where I've come from, because it hasn't always been like this. So to assist with the storytelling process, I present some pictures. So this is me. That's little Lauren. And I've always had dogs. I've had dogs since I was born, except for right now. But we'll talk about that later. But this is me. Terrible 80s, typical what I call robot hair, helmet hair. And I'm Lauren, and I love dogs. And I am one of 3 kids, so I am the oldest of 3. This is my family. There's dad, mum, typical Western family. Me, the oldest, with a bad smile. So I had really gappy teeth as a kid, and I hated smiling, actually. So you can see right now I have really straight teeth, so thank God for orthodontics and the fact that my parents invested lots of money in that. But you can't see very well, but I could fit a $2 coin between my teeth as a 7-year-old. It was very embarrassing, and I was quite self-conscious of that. But I've always loved to entertain, and I used to sing and dance on my neighbour's balcony as a small child. Very inappropriate songs from Greece, not realising, obviously, as a 7-year-old, that they're highly inappropriate when talking about pussy wagons. Probably not ideal for kids. But I spent most of my life being pretty normal, and was quite the high achiever. So at school, I kind of followed in the belief system and value structure that my dad imparted on me. It was always about being successful, defining yourself through academic achievement. For me, I was teased all the time as a kid. We changed schools, my parents moved, and I had to relocate. And I remember when I went from the first school to my second school, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I used to get teased because of the way that I looked. Had a big nose, big bum, dorky looking face, pretty much. And nobody really was friends with me, except for a lovely group of girls who continued to be friends with me to adulthood. But once again, more about that later. So spent most of my life being a high achiever. I excelled academically because obviously I wasn't a very good looking kid, funny looking kid, an FLK. So I had to create this identity through academic achievement. So I participated in lots and lots of different types of activities like sport, music, and sort of excelled in all those as well. And I started to find that anything I wanted to do, I would get really stressed about stuff, but I would do okay. So those patterns continued all the way to high school, where I did quite well. And I wanted to be an engineer based on the fact that my dad wanted me to be an engineer in the Air Force. So he was in the military. My mum is a wife. He's a wife, but also as a nurse. So getting towards the end of my high school career, I applied to get in the Air Force, and I didn't get in. I didn't actually even pass the general entry exam, actually. So that was a little bit disappointing. My dad was pretty pissed off that I didn't complete or finish, in fact, the general entry component of that. But in the last week of high school, this is when shit started going weird for me. In the last week of high school, we had some pizza for one of our music breakups, and pizza got cold, got reheated, and I ate it, and I ended up with food poisoning. What ended up happening is I developed a thing called Helicobacter. So I had this bacteria, and it caused me to start getting a lot of gastrointestinal issues. So going into high school, I sort of didn't realize I had all these things going on in my gut. So going into university was what I meant. I did an information technology degree. So I got a scholarship, being a smart girl, got a scholarship into an area where we were a bit of a minority group. And it was great. I ended up spending most of that money on alcohol because I kind of lost the plot as an 18-year-old. Never drunk, was always such a goody two-shoes. Always being the teacher's pet, and then kind of broke loose for a bit. And I lived quite a destructive lifestyle. So I'd go out all the time and drink and party and smoke weed and drink lots of sugary drinks, drink lots of caffeine, not really realizing how much of an implication that was having on my health. And then one day I just started getting a little bit sick. I didn't really think about it too much, but I started getting quite bloated. I just normalized it for a bit. And for me, that was kind of how I was living my life, just feeling a little bit sick. Things would upset my gut, and I didn't really realize at the time how sick I actually was. I ended up meeting this lovely guy called Brian. And Brian, I actually met him through the drive-through. Actually, I met him at the PCYC. I was doing some Pilates with one of my friends, one of the lovely girls that I met when I was a kid. And this is Brian and me. That is me. And that was our first date, actually. We climbed Mount Tibrogargan because that's what you do. And met him, fell in love. And, everything was great. But then my sickness actually started becoming a real problem. So all of a sudden, I started rapidly losing weight and I couldn't work out why. So I was in my early 20s and then I started pooping blood. Now, I can't sugarcoat that, can't make that sound nicer than it is. It's reality of what happened. And I ended up in hospital. So they're trying to work out what the heck is going wrong with me. Everything I ate just went through me. And after months and back and forth trying to work things out, they diagnosed me with a condition called ulcerative colitis. So ulcerative colitis is an autoimmune condition. It's a form of inflammatory bowel disease. There are a couple of forms of inflammatory bowel disease. I should say a few, because you've got things like Crohn's disease, which is very similar. Crohn's disease affects your gut anywhere, your digestive system from your mouth to your butt. Ulcerative colitis is sort of the bottom half, and then you've got things like diverticulitis as well. So diagnosed me with inflammatory bowel disease and basically said, I'm really sorry, here's some medication, maybe try a gluten-free diet, might help you feel better. So here I am at uni, living a destructive life with this lovely guy and trying this health thing. So what ended up happening is I was put on steroid medication, ended up gaining about 26.5 kilos over a 6-month period. So I then hated myself. And I went from being really, really skinny. I was about 40 kilos at my worst when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and I gained a lot of weight very fast. So what happened is I started getting really tired, and here I am eating all of this gluten-free food, thinking it's good for me, not realizing actually that it's just full of sugar, because when they take the gluten out, they put sugar in. So pretty much I'm sick. I'm going to the doctor, and they diagnosed me with a condition called chronic fatigue. So syndrome, chronic fatigue. They also diagnosed me with fibromyalgia because of the way that my pain was presenting in my body. And I was essentially told that this is going to be your new normal. Deal with it. Sorry, this is just how it is. At least you're not bleeding. At least you're not sick. And that was kind of my life. So I got depressed. I started developing anxiety, so I went on medication for that as well. They diagnosed me with a thing called PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So my PMS was like constant all the time. I wanted to kill myself. I would go through these manic depressive swings. So I had to go on antidepressants, which helped me with that. I had to go on the pill because they thought, that I had PCOS as well. So polycystic ovaries. So they put me on all this medication. And so I'm just like this walking chemical cocktail for ages. And I basically lived like that for about 8 years. So still achieving things. Went into business with my dad when I graduated uni. And we ran a mobility equipment and rehabilitation business together. So we're still getting along quite well with my dad at that point. And then 3 massive things happened in my life. Thing number 1 was my dad, who I was running a business with. He was going through some shit. And for some reason, I became a target for some reason. And he hit me in the face at work, backhanded me, fucked my jaw, blamed me for it. Turned into this big thing where like my family pulled apart, my parents got divorced. My dad then kept harassing me constantly. He would not leave me alone. I blocked him. I didn't really know what to do. He started going to my friends, telling them what a piece of shit I was, going to my husband, who then blocked him on Facebook. It's pretty bad. It was pretty bad. It was very, very stressful. Very, very stressful. And then, I started getting sick again because I'm getting stressed. And then I had to take out an order on him because he wouldn't leave me alone. And then he blamed me for that and then told everybody that I was a piece of shit. He wished I would die and get cancer. And 6 months later, then my beautiful husband, Brian, who suffered from some mental health things and never felt good enough, he ended up committing suicide. And it's funny because our first date was up a mountain and the last thing he did was jump off one. So it was 2 days after my 31st birthday, and as you can imagine, I was a fucking mess. I had lost my whole sense of purpose, whole sense of identity, whole sense of well-being. I was grieving. And yeah, so I ended up having to find something to do with myself because I didn't really know what to do to cope. And so I started going to the gym like religiously. And when I talk about going to the gym, like I just turn up and like be on the treadmill. Like I'd just be there half an hour before closing time at the PCYC and didn't really know what else to do, but had to find something to do. Otherwise I was going to go fucking crazy. So I did that for a while and just treadmill because I didn't really know what else to do. And then one day this lovely guy called Pat came up to me and he said, "Hey, would you like me to teach you how to lift weights?" And I remember looking down at the gym at all these sweaty, grunty, stinky men and being, if I'm going to look like that, then there's no way I'm lifting weights, Pat, because I don't want to look like that. That's gross. And Pat, who's an old school bodybuilder, is like, you can't look like that. You're a girl, you're a chick with female hormones. Like, unless you take hormones, you're just going to be toned. And I thought, oh, okay. So I went down to the gym and I started with 1 kilo dumbbells. And I remember getting from 1 kilo, finding them starting to get easier, and then it got to 2. Then I eventually went from 2 to 3, then 3 to 4. And as you can see, I was starting to make progress. I was feeling good. I could measure my progress, which was really, really important. As a high achiever, I need to feel like I'm making progress, right? So over a 6-month period, here I am, I'm going down to the gym area where all the people are lifting weights. I'm making new friends. I'm starting to communicate. When Brian died, all my childhood friends who I'd had since sort of that first day at my new school, they'd stay with me the whole time, but then they said that I wasn't giving enough to the relationship and that I was taking too much. And I look back at that and I think, well, how can I possibly give something? I've just lost everything. Everything I know to be my identity, like it's literally, I've got nothing. But they all basically divorced me. So I made new friends, which is great. And part of this conversation I was having down in the gym was about food. So I remember having a conversation about what I was eating with some of the fellas, and I realized that I think I had a sugar thing going on. So I did a big sugar detox, went down the path of sort of natural and complementary therapies and did a big detox, did some heavy metal stuff, did some hormonal balancing stuff. So started changing the way that I was eating. Then, started getting into podcasts and listening to things like Tony Robbins, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So I met Mick, and who is now my husband, but met him, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, learned a lot about myself on that trip. One of the hardest things I've ever done. Physically, mentally, emotionally. I thought I was going to die, but more about that later. I nearly didn't make it up the mountain. They had to give me a special Sherpa on my own, and it took me 7.5 hours to summit. I had to leave at midnight, and I got up there at 7:30 in the fucking morning. I have a photo, but I don't have it on me. But I learned a heap about myself over that period. So over about 6 months, I started losing weight, feeling good, getting toned, getting committed, learning about myself. So by the end of 2016, so 6 months after Brian passed away, I decided that I would do a bodybuilding show in legacy to him. So I got myself a coach and started training for a show. So in May 2017, I stepped on stage for my first show as a bikini athlete. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Didn't know what to expect. But didn't place as much as I wanted to. I didn't actually place at all. I had no idea what to expect. I was really disappointed with myself actually as a high achiever. But I wanted to keep going. So just to give some perspective, most people, when they do these sorts of shows, they do about one show every 2 to 3 years. Well, what I ended up doing after that first show is 13 shows in 14 months. That's how obsessive and high achiever I was. So what that ended up turning into was this version of me who was just consistently obsessed with numbers to the point of complete addiction. I was counting all my calories. I was weighing all my food. I was training through injury. I was training 6 days a week. I was training 3 hours a day over the course of a day. When I wasn't training, I was on social media about 7 hours a day, building up a social media following. I had about 100,000 followers. It was all tits and arse shots, I'm just going to be honest. People like that. Most of my following are middle-aged men in other countries. But as you can imagine, that's not sustainable. I didn't realize that at the time because I believe that when you swing so far in one direction, you have to swing an equal amount in the opposite direction to counteract that and find what's in between. So 13 shows later, 14 months later, guess what happens to my body? I start to get sick again. And yeah, basically I started pooping blood. My body started shutting down. Everyone's saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? I didn't know. It was just part of my identity. But all my close friends that I developed who I really trusted basically said, you need to stop. So with the consultation of my medical team, I decided to go cold turkey. And good thing I did because, I'd had a brain tumor. I had a tumor on my pituitary gland. So I had to go on medication for that. End up finding a hole in my heart. So I've had heart surgery. So I had a hole called a PFO, patent foramen ovale. From birth, nobody fucking knew it was there. Nobody can believe I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro actually doing that, and even did all that shit to my body through the bodybuilding stuff, because I should have had a stroke and died, but I didn't. And I'm here talking to you and sharing my story with you. So when I went cold turkey, I bought back 10 hours a day of my life. So I wasn't spending 7 hours a day on Instagram anymore. I wasn't spending 3 hours a day in the gym. That's 10 hours. What did I do? Well, I did all of this. All of those things you can see there on the wall. I went and studied. So I went and studied, and I figured that I need to become a better coach than the coach that I had. My brother and sister, we've all grown up now. That's us. That was us before. And I had plastic surgery too. I forgot to mention that. But that was us. That was me. It's me. But yeah, I ended up, buying back all this time in my life. So I went and became a personal trainer in my early 30s. And that was a really big step for me. I already had a degree. I was already running a successful business. But becoming a fitness professional was a massive step, because I'd never really acknowledged as, this snobby, high achieving intellect that personal training would be something I would ever be interested in. The fitness was like, what is that? But I learned so much, and I never really had any intention of actually PTing anybody. I did it for me. I call it me search. So I did a heap of me search, like just studying. But I ended up studying about 13 things in about 18 months. So when I finished my PT certification, I realized that PTs actually couldn't talk to people about like real life. So then I became a life coach. I studied mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy as well as part of that journey. Did a lot of self-development, went to Tony Robbins, read lots of books, listened to lots of podcasts. And then I realized that PTs and life coaches, and even with that skill set, they couldn't talk to people about food and the power of food. So then I did a course in nutritional modification for weight loss and wellness. So got so many different things going on. But I remarried, which is amazing. So I remarried. I married Mick. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with. We got married in Vegas. It was very, very fun. And I realized that the way that I'd sort of handled all that stuff was not what most people would do. And people kept asking me, how the fuck did you get through all of that? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I just did what I normally do, which is just keep going, right? There's just some resilience there. But when I started to pull it apart, I realized I had a bit of a process that I followed. I didn't realize that I followed a process, but I created a process essentially. And I pulled it all apart, and I started to develop this strategy, this blueprint of what I actually did. So I worked out how I started and how I got through, and devised this thing called the healthy habit hierarchy, because I realized that everything I did, everything that got me unstuck, was actually all about habit and discipline. And it came down to like daily stuff and lifelong stuff. So I was blogging through all of my journey, all of this shit, and ended up writing a book out of it called The Healthy Habit Handbook, which I'm about to rebrand and relaunch as Get the Fuck Unstuck, by the way. But yeah, I ended up accidentally writing this book and realized that I probably should coach people in this. So because I was actually just coaching people through it anyway, and I realized I should just formalize this. So I decided to call myself a healthy habit coach, and that's kind of what I do, and that's why it's important. So now my husband Mick has a daughter, Britt, and Britt now has a daughter called Amity. So I am Gma to Amity. She knows me as Gma. She just graduated from preschool last year, so she starts school, which is awesome. She's in prep, and I live an awesome fucking life. I did have 2 doggies, so I had Kelsey and I have Buddy, both of who now are no longer earthside. Buddy passed away just a couple of weeks ago, 4 days to the day that Kelsey passed away, and they were the absolute love of my life. And the things I've learnt through all of these experiences, I have the capacity to love, the capacity to change, the capacity to be positive and fulfilled and happy. And I look back at the person I was as a teenager, and I was really negative. I was really, really cynical about everything. Everything was like glass half empty. I was really down on myself, and my friendship dynamics was supporting that kind of conversation that I was having internally. So now I really focus on all of my habits. So the key points of focus for me are daily practices of eating well, breathing effectively, hydrating enough, sleeping quality wise, like getting enough sleep, and moving. So eating, breathing, sleeping, moving, hydrating. I did that in a different order, but fucking whatever. It's my story. Deal with it. But they're the 5 habits, and I call those handbrake habits. So what I've realized through all of the conversations I've had with clients and my own personal journey is people really fucking complicate the transformation process. There are coaches out there that will be like, right, you want to get strong, you want to change your life, and then they make you do all these absurd things like you got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you got to be journaling, you got to be going for a run, you got to be doing ice baths, you got to be doing all this fucking biohacking, and then drinking lemon water and doing water fasts. And I'm just like, what? Fuck off. None of that stuff is sustainable for the average person. But I tell you what, we're all eating, we're all breathing, we're all sleeping, we're all moving, and we're all hydrating. We're already fucking doing those things. Let's make those things more effective for us. So that's going to look different for everybody. But essentially, if we can focus on those things, you don't have to add extra things in. You don't have to take things away. We just want to make them more effective. Without those 5 things, you will die. Yeah? Yeah? If you don't exercise, your body will die. Your body will break down. It will break down. Without food, water, hydration, sleep, it's pretty obvious what will happen, right? So if we can just focus on those 5 handbrake habits. I call them handbrake habits because effectively, imagine that you are a car and those things are handbrakes. You're probably driving around right now with those handbrakes jammed right on. Now, the thing about driving a car with a handbrake is that you can still drive the car with a handbrake on, right? But it's slow, it's clunky, it doesn't get very fast, very far, and it's going to wear out pretty quick. So that's you right now with those 5 handbrakes. If we release one handbrake though, what we find is the car gets what we call momentum, and through momentum, it will be easy to release those other handbrakes. So the reason that works really well in terms of the handbrake habit strategy is what you'll find is if you can improve one of those 5 things, some of those other things may automatically start to improve for you. For instance, if you improve your eating, you're probably going to hydrate more. You're probably going to have more energy to exercise more effectively. Your sleep's going to improve. Yeah. And if we focus on your breathing, you'll find that some of those other things will resolve themselves as well. So it's about finding the handbrake that's holding you back the most, focusing on unlocking that, and incidentally, some of those other ones will unlock, and we start doing it slowly. But we do it through a process called the healthy habit hierarchy. So the healthy habit hierarchy is a lifelong blueprint to change that incorporates those 5 handbrake habits. So it's 6 M's, and we have to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. So we start with momentum. And momentum is all about discovering where it is that you are, where it is that you want to be, why you're not there yet, what's getting in your way, what you're prepared to change, and what you're not prepared to change. And it acts as like a compass, right? Without knowing those things, your belief systems, your values, how the hell are you going to make a change? You're not going to know why you're going to change, or it's going to be for some superficial, extrinsic thing. But it's about really tapping into that why, and the why not, and the I can't, and shooting all over yourself. So momentum is the first M. The next M is menu. And the reason I use menu is menu incorporates breathing, hydration, and eating. So if we can fix the things that we consume and we can optimize those things, biochemically, you'll start to unlock the next M that sits above that, which is mindset. Your gut tells your brain all sorts of lies. If you eat a really heavy carb meal, you'll probably want to go to bed, because your body is telling your brain, I'm tired, it's trying to process stuff. So there is a biochemical connection between your gut and your brain. You ask any naturopath about that and you'll learn all about that axis. So if we can fix the way and improve the way that we eat, we hydrate, and we breathe, you're going to get a better chance of unlocking better mindset. You're going to lose that brain fog that you've probably been carrying around for years and years and years. And at that mindset level, so we've gone from momentum to menu to mindset. At mindset level, we'll be able to unlock bulletproof sleep and be able to set really clear and solid goals without having clouded judgment. Yeah? Cool. So that's what mindset's all about. And we can look at all sorts of different things through mindset. The next M is movement. Now, this is the biggest mistake people make, is when they want to change their whole life, they jump right in at that movement level. And the problem is you can't out-exercise a suboptimal diet, suboptimal breathing, or crappy sleep. It's true. You cannot do it. If you want to change your life, you can't out-exercise that fucking shit. So at the end of the day, movement is way higher up the hierarchy. And I never knew that until part of my life, I was a Zumba instructor, but I was eating poorly, I was breathing ineffectively, and I wasn't hydrating enough. And I couldn't work out why I was carrying all this weight. I was literally a whole butt cheek wider, and I could not lose weight. I could not lose it. So yeah, there goes. It proves it as a simple case study. You can't out-exercise a suboptimal diet. So get your facts right. Movement sits much higher. So movement is all about movement improvement, and looking at movement as a really holistic way of living. Movement isn't just about lifting heavy or running fast. It's all about balance, mobility, endurance, cardiovascular fitness. Things like thinking about the kind of ways you want to move in 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now, and starting to deconstruct that back to right now, what do I have to start focusing on? There's no point being able to, bench press twice your body weight if you can't fucking touch your toes. I still run a mobility equipment and rehab store. That thing that I started with my dad, 17 years later, it's still going. I've learned a lot. I see a lot. I know a lot from firsthand experience. I watch people age terribly. You want active aging, guys, and you want to be focusing on developing a really holistic movement pattern. So try things like yoga, Pilates. I'm a Pilates instructor as well. All of these things matter. All movement matters. And people say, well, what type of exercise should I do? And I say, it's the one that you're going to fucking do. If you just get up and dance in the morning and that's the first thing you do and it's the only thing you do, it's better than not doing it, right? But we want to start stacking that up and looking at other forms of exercise. The biggest test of someone's longevity, the biggest predictor of somebody's longevity is the way that their body moves as well, and the stuff that goes on inside. If you're carrying lots of good muscle, it's going to help protect you as you get older. So we've got momentum, menu, mindset, movement. Then we move up to mastery. And mastery is about actually becoming a master of all of those habits and being able to self-regulate and self-diagnose when you get stuck, when some shit happens. Since all that shit happened in my life, I've just had, a couple of months of just extra shit going on. I had my dog get really sick. He's been palliative for 8 months. I had to put him to sleep the other day. It was horrendous. I've never lived without a dog. That little girl, I had dogs my whole life. I've only had 8 months when I haven't had a dog. So it's really, really challenging for me right now on a personal level. But because I'm a master, I'm able to self-regulate better. So mastery is all about really repatterning those behaviors and recognizing when something else happens, how to still tap into those habits, those handbrake habits, and the downstream hierarchy to start unlocking yourself. So that's mastery. And then the last M, the 6M, is mentorship. Because what you'll find is when you go through that process of momentum, menu, mindset, movement, mastery, change those 5 handbrake habits, people are going to notice and going to be like, hey, what have you been doing? Because I don't even know who you are anymore in a good way. Like, you've changed so much. You're looking good, you're feeling good, you're sounding good, your energy is amazing. Tell me what you did. And my mentorship is all about paying it forward. And I've structured programs for that. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to my story. I live a really happy, inspired life now. And you know what? I'm still dealing with those autoimmune things. Autoimmune diseases don't fucking go away, right? When I get stressed, which I don't as much anymore, but when I get stressed, I don't feel stress mentally. I don't manifest stress the way that I did, but my body can't handle stress and my colitis flares up. I've also developed a second condition associated with that condition in my gut. I have a faulty gene, so I found out, which is causing and linked to this. I have a condition in my hip. I spent most of 2020 not being able to walk. My sciatic nerve and all of my back were implicated into it. It was really, really, really painful, but I still have to manage that, right? So I'm not out of the woods, but I manage things so much better than I've ever managed before because I have this blueprint to fall back on. And I really hope that you've learned something from my journey today and it can inspire you and be a beacon to unlock something inside of you, because you can live an unstoppable life. If you are stuck, you can't just jump to unstoppable. People think, you just can jump in leaps and bounds. If you try to eat the whole fucking elephant, you're going to choke. We've got to start breaking it down and chunking it down. If you are stuck right now, please start working out how and why you're stuck. What are you stuck on? What are those handbrake habits that are holding you back right now? Because when we sort of identify where you're stuck, we can define what unstuck looks like for you. And maybe that's moving with more ease, bouncing back better, waking up with more energy, starting to develop better habits, not feeling so lethargic and having the capacity to start doing things that we actually enjoy again and improving our body confidence. But to move to unstoppable, it doesn't take that much once you're unstuck. Like I've been stuck and unstuck and stuck but unstuck but stuck. The doctors told me that I was unstuck. when they put me on all those medications. But I was fucking terrible. I was not unstuck at all, but according to the medical system, I was. And there have been times that I've thought I was unstuck when I was doing all those bodybuilding shows. I was really stuck. So at the end of the day, all you need to do is start working that out. Think about the habits that you have. You can change your life. If you want help, please reach out to me. I'm here. I'm a message away. I know what it's like. Okay, I know what it's like. And from the outside, from this person, you may not have known any of those things about me, you know, but at the end of the day, you have the capacity to change your life. It just takes one step.